here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
If you give a cat the skill cat-like reflexes, wouldn't that just be reflexes?
I
like the name.
Yeah.
I like the name. That's
Yes.
why
I can't. We can't knock you for it. It's great. You have a cat in there. You got to give him the ability of cat-like reflexes,
and also a claw weapon and a meow noise when they die.
So great. Also joining us is your co-host Julie.
Hello from the great north, where the sun is bright and the lawns are brown.
Not enough rainfall this year. We know what that's like over here in California. Also joining us is your co-host Thorsten.
Hello from a parallel universe. I just don't know what.
your co-host Jacob.
Starting as every good JRPG does, on fire.
And your co-host David.
Primer objective achieved. System switched to normal mode.
Friends, we have a guest this week joining us from up in Washington State. Doug from Psychronic. Thank you. Psychronic Games.
Psychronic.
Oh, my brain. To talk about a game we streamed a couple times and we all really enjoyed, Starshift Origins, and the other games in the series that are following Starshift Origins. Rebellion, and then what's the third one? Rebellion.
We got Rebellion, then we got Freelancers, then we got Legacy.
Oh wait, there's a fourth one. Oh, I didn't know about the fourth.
There's a fourth one because a person who was a big fan of my game was like, I want to make an episode in your universe, and I was like, okay, yeah, here's my project file, and he's making one. So that's
wow.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
If you I don't expect that, but makes sense.
You know what? Back in the heyday of Star Trek in the 90s, they took user submissions for scripts. And a lot of those scripts that were taken, the people that were hired eventually became writers on the show and directors and whatnot. So there is a sort of a precedent for this sort of thing. So that's really exciting, actually, that someone was excited enough about the universe you're creating that they wanted to build a part of it. That's pretty awesome.
I do have to polish it up a little bit, meaning like the story was good, but he's not as good at like the making.
Whoa.
Lost your audio for a moment there.
Doug?
Come in, Doug. Come on.
Oh, God.
To guess.
What was that? Sorry, was that? Did I get cut off?
Yeah, you did get cut off.
Yes.
You did get cut off. You said the writing was good, but.
I said the writing is good, but I'm going to have to help polish up the graphics and stuff like that and some of the gameplay stuff. But the story is the part that takes the longest when, making any game like this for if you're trying to tell a story, like thinking about something that's interesting and what comes next. So he's got that down, no problem for Freelancers. But as far as the ones I'm working on right now, I'm working on Starshift Rebellion. Starshift Origins, the one that you guys have played, this game was just the beginning. Now, it's kind of interesting how this game got built. This one only took 3 months for me to make it.
Wait, what? 3 months?
What?
Yeah, because I want to kind of explain that Legacy is the big game. The game that I started working on a few years ago that's not done yet. And that game is a lot bigger, meaning like it has, you'll have like a base of operations, you'll have like morality choices, kind of like Fallout situation where you can make like different decisions and help different factions, which affects the overall ending at the end. Like there will be multiple endings and stuff like that. But
yes,
wow.
But Origins is a prologue game, and it was made because I got approached by a publisher who kind of was like, we want to publish your game Starshift, and I said, well, I don't know if I feel comfortable publishing my main game, but can we do a trial run? Maybe you can publish a prologue game or something, and that was Origins. So I had to kind of really tighten it up and sacrifice a bit to get it done. It's kind of linear. It's kind of railroaded in the story because it was meant to be a prologue to a larger game. I don't want to go through a publisher again for my larger game, but I learned a lot through this process, and I had a game to show for it. Didn't make much money from it or anything, but it taught me a lot about the game industry and working with publishers. But now with Rebellion, the one I'm working on now, I've taken a little more time on it. I've been working on it for about a year and a half, and it's definitely upped the quality on the story and the graphics and everything to tell the next. It's basically a second prologue. So the main game is going to be where by the time you start the main game, you don't have to play the previous games to enjoy it, but there's a large cast of characters. It's an ensemble cast, so including the villains, and so you'll just know more about them because they're all going to converge together for the big showdown at the end of the main game. And so knowing who all these factions are, how they relate, and then at the end giving the player the choice to kind of make things go one way or another, and offer that replayability. But yeah. Sorry, I don't want to ramble on. If there's,
it's a podcast about your games. It's your.
Go ahead.
You're allowed to hog the airtime somewhat,
hey, sir. We're talking about your stuff.
One thing. I will commend you for one thing, because I've heard like a whole thing. Like I heard you go, "Oh, I'm gonna make this big Fallout-like game with moral choices and so on and so forth." I appreciate you making the simpler game first to see if you can do it. Because I see so many people say they're going to make the bestest game of all time, spend 17 years on it, get burnt out, and never amount to anything.
Right, and that was part of the methodology too, because it was taking a long time to get things done. And I mean, I have to make a lot. I have to make a lot of maps. I have to make a lot of Sorry, I don't know why my thing keeps cutting out. I have to make a lot of maps. I have to make a lot of graphics. I have to do a lot of writing. So can I actually get it done? And when I was working on my original project, I thought it was getting a little too ambitious, where I didn't know if I could get it done. And is it going to take me 10 years to make this game? So the idea of these episodes that I'm making now, Origins is an episode, Rebellion's an episode, Freelancers is an episode. And it's basically like a normal RPG telling a specific story, but in the meantime, these are real places you can go to in the larger game. So I can build a whole civilization and have kind of a localized story for that civilization or that story in the game, that faction, and then in the main game, they will actually converge at some point, and I'll be able to actually copy a lot of my maps from the previous episodes I've made and make this a bigger universe in the larger game. And meanwhile, I'm developing different skills for the characters. I'm developing different features of the game that they'll all be in the main game, but building up. So that way I can release something every once in a while, at least, that's a standalone thing on its own, but then actually it's still going toward the development of the main game, which is a technique I'm calling double development at once, because I can actually move this over to the bigger project after making a more refined project that will actually get done within a year for each one, or whatever. So,
well, I have to say I think it's a smart strategy, because you already have fans of what you're building, like someone's making Freelancers. So doing this kind of episodically allows you to slowly build an audience for what's going to be, I guess, your crescendo.
Exactly.
And you don't see that very often. You see people like working on their one game and make their one game and then they move on to something else. You don't see typically an episodic thing like this. And I have to say, I think it's a very clever thing, because it builds hype, it builds longevity, and it builds your fan base. So I gotta say, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Another thing, because the algorithm of Steam actually pushes games more if a publisher already has published a game.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, that makes sense, but
I didn't know that either. That's cool. But the point is that I'm thinking long term here, and I'm thinking of something like a Star Trek. Like, I'm trying to create a nice iconic franchise with really good stories to tell, and of course I could totally improve much further. And I think that if I had, as it gets bigger, a team might form, and we can tell even better stories or better gameplay, right? But I'm actually trying to build something that will stand the test of time. Money is only kind of a secondary motivator. It's so like, if I had to build a game specifically for, I'm trying to make as much money as possible making a game, I would have to make a completely different type of game than what I've made here. No, but you know how there's some games that they might have not even like sold that well when they came out or whatever, but then for some reason people are still talking about them 10, 15, 20 years later and go back to them and mention them, and it's remembered because it was good, like logically a good game. I'm kind of going for something more like that. At the end of the day, I want more people to play the game if they enjoy these kind of games, and it's not everybody's cup of tea either. I admit that, but I will say that the actual game, because the motivation for me to make this game was kind of like, when I was a kid, I was really into like those RPGs, like Final Fantasy and stuff like that, but I kind of like some of the more obscure ones, like Suikoden, for example. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Suikoden series. Yeah, but Suikoden 2 was like one of my favorite games, and in that game, you have the tactical battles for like the armies. The idea is that you have to form a rebel force, and there's a story with all the characters, and there's 108 playable characters in those games, and
oh my god,
and large parties too. So 6 character parties. I have 7 character parties in my game, but my point is that a lot of the gameplay for my game is based on the Suikoden series, but not the setting, because the setting for that series is kind of like ancient, like few hundreds of years ago, like that kind of thing. But the idea is that you have a base of operations, you have your military, and you have your characters and their story. So when I was making Legacy, which is the bigger game that I'm referring to, I have a lot of playable characters in that game too, probably like 40 or 50 playable characters so far. But I noticed that as I was going along with it, the writing was starting to get a little flat for all these characters because there's too many people to manage, too many personalities to manage. So the idea of these episodes is to kind of like fill in the backstory of some of these characters and give them a little bit of dimension. So by the time they converge in the bigger game with the larger cast, like the player, if they liked this series, they might know who all these people are, and like, yeah, this is crazy. This story is crazy in a good way, and that's kind of what I'm going for.
Quick question here about all these characters. Will you ever make your characters like comment on stuff like you may see in the Mass Effect games?
What do you mean? Like they'll actually chime in when certain things are happening, depending on their character? Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah, and then like in the main game Legacy, the leader or there's a skill tree called leader, and that's for like the main player, of course, the first character they pick in the beginning, and there's different skills like diplomacy or or extreme charisma, and stuff like that will affect the outcome as far as like an interaction with any of these characters that may or may not join you, or they may or may not work with you depending on what decisions you've made and stuff like that.
That's great. Love to hear it.
I've never heard of the Suikoden series myself, but I see that.
It's not all of them are the not. I just really liked Suikoden 2. So I liked 1, 2, and 5. I didn't really like 3 or 4 that much, but the second one especially, it just tells a really good story. You're a youth brigade person. You're like very young person who's in the military, and you uncover a plot that your own nation false flagged itself, and you were like the cannon fodder for it doing that, but you escape, and then you're on the run, and then you have to form a rebel army and take your nation back, and there's army battles. You get a castle, and people you talk to along the way join your castle, and it makes your movement get stronger and stuff, and it's a really good story. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
I see there's a re-release of the first 2 games. It looks like it's on Steam and Switch.
Yep, and I would highly recommend for anybody who likes those kind of games, for sure.
Well, I like your game, so that's why.
Yeah, well, no. I'm glad you do. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, my little button that I press for push to talk is kind of jacked up. Maybe I can change it to normal voice. One sec.
No worries. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'll mention for you, Brian, that while he's doing that, the Suikoden games are a sort of dead series at this point because some of the later entries kind of flopped, and there is another game that's related to the Suikoden series because the developers who are working on that had collected a bunch of the people who had worked on the Suikoden games before, and that's Eiyuden Chronicle.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that one. It looks cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm also very much looking forward to that.
Can you link that in the chat, please?
Yeah, I will.
I wishlisted the remaster of Suikoden 1 or 2 on Switch. I mean on Steam. Because I'm usually not big into JRPGs, but I have to admit yours plays Starshift Origin plays really quickly, which is great.
Yes.
It's very efficient. It's very fast. I don't feel like it's wasting my time. Thank you, Spaz.
Yeah, that's intentional. So I wanted the combat system to be, because that's one of the things that I don't like about JRPGs either. I like the genre overall, but I haven't really liked one in more recent years. But sometimes the battles are really grindy, and they take forever for normal enemies to defeat them, and it just feels boring. I wanted to have a lot of options for the player, as well as a fast system, quick to kill, quick to die. Meaning, if you're not paying attention, they can kill you pretty quickly. If you're paying attention, you can kill them pretty quickly. And not too many fights, but nothing either. It's a balance. But I'm just making a game to my preferences. The type of game that I wish I could have played when I was younger, but I never saw it. So because especially the sci-fi setting, because there's not a lot of JRPGs in a sci-fi setting. The vast majority of them are really like medieval setting or high fantasy setting. And
yeah, there's Xenogears, there's Phantasy Star kind of, and that's it.
And there's Star Ocean,
kind of.
But a lot of times there's a lot of fantasy elements intertwined within. I wanted to go for more. It's Starshift isn't necessarily a quote unquote hard sci-fi. It's not, but I wanted to go with something more akin to a Star Trek vibe rather than and the swords. I tried to come up with excuses for why they would make sense, because it's just more fun to have more weapons. But the sword has a personal teleporter on it, so suddenly swords became viable when previously why would you have a sword when you would always have a gun? That
which
kind
is
of
very
thing.
silly, but I love it.
Yeah, I love it. I have to admit, I love it. It's why would you have oh, that's why, because you materialize right in front of your target, zip, 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 and then beam out. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
So I just got that. How do you say it? Eiyuden Chronicles?
Eiyuden.
Yeah.
Eiyuden.
The Rising game is for sale on Switch right now, so I just picked that up.
And that's made by a completely different group. That one. It's it's meant to tell a little bit backstory that the gameplay isn't going to be the same as the actual game, but it is there. Yeah. Just
okay.
Set in the same world.
It's related, but it's not this. It's not the core group that it's not the core group that's making the main game that made that game. So it's like different gameplay and stuff. So just FYI.
Oh, thank you. I'll still check it out because I like.
Yeah.
I also like supporting good games. You know what I mean? And if I can afford it.
Yeah, me too.
So you say you made this game in 3 months.
Yes, because I copied over my project file from Legacy, and then that's incomplete, of course, and then I just kind of toned it down to tell this prologue story. So this game, if you play it pretty quickly, you can beat this game in about 7 hours. So it's not actually a super long game. 7 to 9 hours. You can use more like for me, if I rush through it, because I know exactly what to do, it takes me like 5 hours. But most people have been like 7-ish, and it was meant to be a prologue. So the idea was that this was going to be a free game for the publisher, but the publisher was like, okay, you added too much gameplay for it being a free game, so we put like a $6 price tag on it or something like that,
which is very reasonable. Which is a very reasonable price,
Yeah, I think so. But what I'm planning to do is in November, my contract is up with the publisher. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make the first game, Origins, a free game, and then that's why I'm also localizing right now. So I pretty much have translated this game into 6 other languages now, and I have the mechanical aspect of that done. Like not the actual translations themselves, but the if somebody picks English and loads the game, and then saves the game in Japanese, and then loads it in Chinese, and then saves it in Russian, will it break the game or will it work? So I gotten that part done. And I'm planning on making. So I have to speak to some native speakers to get them to do proofreading, and I have people for some of the languages so far. And so I want to release that as a free game. So international audience, for the most part, will have different choices of language, and this will be the landing pad. Origins is the landing pad. But then when I release subsequent games, I'm thinking release them for a modest price as well, and then after a year or two, you make it a free game as well. But because my goal here is to turn it into like a nice iconic franchise like Star Trek or something. So but for a game series. So that's why like I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for that. And my idea on the marketing has always been really tough, and I think that a lot of developers struggle with that. But my long-term strategy is just make sure that what you produce is decent, or it's a good game, or it's fun, or it tells a good story, and eventually, if you keep doing that, then eventually the dam will break, where somebody will be like, hey, they've made like 4 or 5 games, I can't believe I've never heard of this before, and then they play it and enjoy it, and then tell their friends and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do. I don't, we'll see if it works, but that's what I'm going for.
Right. Quick question, actually. You're localizing the game. What languages do you have going so far?
So the first batch is going to be, obviously English, because that's the language it's already in. Spanish, traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, Japanese, and Russian.
Okay.
But I can add more later. I'm just basically prioritizing markets that maybe don't by default don't speak
full
English.
Get the big ones, then the smaller ones. Good.
Yeah, and sorry Europe, but most of you speak English, it seems like. So it's like, okay.
Well, I feel targeted now. Thank you.
What I was going to say
our 3 Europeans on the cast. How do you feel about that?
I feel no, actually most Europeans don't speak English. It's why I have a job.
Right.
To clarify, I'm from Poland. I work and I'm studying and working in localization. So, on the off chance you're looking for that market, I'm available.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm cool to add as many as I can get away with. I mean, sometimes I'm dealing with the limitations of the RPG Maker engine, which As this goes on, I mean,
really bad with fonts. I know.
Yeah, well, there's workarounds for that. But no, it just gets like where that's kind of why I had to break this up into some episodes too, because with Legacy, I'm going to run into like the map limit. Like, so there's map limits. Like, okay, you can only have 2,000 maps or 1,000 maps, and I'm like, oh, I have 890 maps. Okay. Stuff like that. And so I might eventually have to move on to a more robust engine to make the next one if I keep making these. And but I've been on RPG Maker for a long time, since the early 2000s, and I never. I mean, this is the first game that I've actually stuck with it and been serious to get it done, kind of thing. I have a lot of previous projects that were half completed or whatever, but basically, I just told myself, hey, I can at least work on this every Saturday. And that's when I started getting stuff done, instead of like, I'll get to it when I feel like it, which would end up just taking longer and longer to get things done. So now I work on it every Saturday, and I stream it live too. So if anybody wants to see the game, game made from start to finish, I stream every Saturday. So I just like literally work on my game for 8 hours in a row or whatever. Yeah.
Put a link to where do you stream? Put a link to your thing in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. One sec.
Because we should tell people about that, because I don't get to watch a lot of other streams, but I do enjoy watching developers when they're actually building their game on stream. I find that fascinating, because I'm not a programmer, so watching people program on stream is like, wow, I feel dumb, but they're so smart.
Yeah. One sec. Where do I put it? Where do I put it?
There's a stream chat near the bottom.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, there's a stream chat thing. You put it in there. All right.
So that's an example of my, when I was working on my, but that's my channel. So it's anybody who wants to check it out, I have my dev logs and pretty much from start to finish.
I'm trying to get a link. I'm trying to get a link to the actual channel. There it is.
Oh yeah.
There's also an interesting question in the chat.
Thank you.
What are the okay? Any thoughts, plans on the world IP to be licensable to cross into other games? Hey, I'm actually really open to that. I'm not. I'm actually kind of in the minority here as far as my opinion about this issue with like the copyright thing, but I actually am pretty open source with my games. Like if other people have like tried to make stuff in my game with I do that. I give out my assets for free. I have anybody who wants to make something that uses my stuff, I'm fine with it. You just go for it. But if you want to work together for some kind of official collaboration to where there would be a mutual benefit to doing so, then I'm open to that as well. Because again, sometimes people just want to use your stuff, and I'm like, whatever, have at it. Sometimes people are serious and they actually want it to be a mutually beneficial thing where you release something together. That's cool. That's cool too. I'm pretty open to whatever. I'm not possessive over my IP. Really, let it be free. Basically, is where I'm at.
Especially if you want to have the legs of Star Trek.
Well, yeah, but the part that bothers me if somebody does use my stuff is if the quality is low. So like if they use it and then they make like a really janky and low quality version of it, then I'm like, oh man, you gotta, before I put my name on this, we need to bring this up to a better standard before I'm willing to do that.
Do whatever you want, but whatever you do, don't make it garbage.
Exactly. Yes.
So this is RPG Maker. So how difficult was it to make these mainly two different kind of combat sequences with this it's normal JRPG jumpy, and then the tactical overhead view?
Yeah. I can tell you that it's like threading a delicate needle, and a lot can go wrong. So, for example, the plugin I'm using for the tactical battle system is called LETBS. It's the best one I found, but it unfortunately was never completed. So, I've run into it's so like the tactical battle system. I'd actually like for it to be better than it is and more tactical than it is, but the plugin is delicate. So it's like if the wind blows the wrong way, you either get massive lag or you get some kind of weird crash. And I've kind of narrowed it down to okay, I can do this without it crashing or lagging.
It's fiddly.
It's very fiddly.
Nope.
Apparently, it's so fiddly it broke your microphone.
Doug.
Come back, Doug.
Doug, you okay? Man, it might be connection issues or something. Who knows?
Ground control to Major Doug.
Oh my god.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Or glue things in where they don't belong. And
Doug, we lost you.
Wait.
Doug, we lost you for
Sorry.
a few minutes again.
Like a minute.
So you were saying how you were narrowing things down, and then you got cut off again. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
wow.
horribly jank.
Yeah. So you're basically the way that I pulled this off is I found a lot of free plugins and over 180 free plugins with different functionality, including the tactical battle system. And it is kind of spaghetti code. It is kind of taped together, glued together, because my knowledge of coding isn't the best. I know enough to be dangerous, so I can mix and match and tape and glue things together and edit things to get what I want. But if I could create it from scratch, it would be a lot more efficient. But I'm actually surprised it's as stable as it is. Yeah, and then and as for the battle system here. The normal battle system is pretty stable. It's the tactical battle system that's always like on the edge of collapsing, and so I'm constantly looking for ways to improve that, and I think I can get there. But I haven't found somebody yet that has been able to help me in that regard because it's a really chunky plugin, like thousands and thousands of lines of code, and I think it's like.
We all know how programming is and how janky things can get. Team Fortress 2 is reliant on a single coconut JPEG. If it works, it's good enough.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean,
yep, and it does work, but it is delicate, and so I have to balance extra stuff I'd like to do in the system versus is this going to collapse this part of the game?
That can be part of the problem because again, if you want to fiddle with something, if you fiddle with something that's about to collapse, it will collapse.
I will compliment you. I don't know if you have a smoke screen going or what, but I never thought for a second that this was fragile or fiddly. It played great. It's played so far great for me. Yeah. No.
Yeah, same here.
There's lots of testing that I do to make sure that it runs good or it runs stable enough. And it's some stuff you'll still see some stuff pop up sometimes, but I just did lots of testing to what if the player does this, what if the player does that, and then getting it to where it is stable, but it's not like it's rock solid or anything. It's stable enough, I guess. That's how I would put it. There's also some changes. There's also some changes I had to make to the core RPG Maker scripts that come with it. Like there's actual problems in those scripts where they do unnecessary math and stuff. So like fixing those things has helped as well. There used to be a big micro jitter problem, but it turned out to be a library file that comes with the engine that causes that jitter, and fixing it.
That isn't actually used.
No, it's garbage collection. So there's like a garbage collection piece of code, and it says collect garbage every 60 times. You can collect garbage a maximum time of 60 times 100 seconds. And it's like, why did you put in 60 times 100? You need to just put 6,000. And then, because it's doing unnecessary math every second, 60 times 1,000 every second instead of just a hard-coded number that's the same thing. And then the jitter went away. It's stupid stuff like that. I don't know.
I love programming.
Oh, man.
I will admit that my exposure to this type of RPG is limited to, by that I mean the top-down 2D kind of thing, and it only goes back as far as some of the early Pokemon games. And so, this is, I guess, why when I started to play this game, I kept getting my butt handed to me, and when I finally start to get a handle on it, and David says, "Oh, hey, there's a difficulty switch," and I turn a corner, and I realize now that it's a drone, but and I turned the corner, and it was like, "Oh, an outer space M1 Abrams. How is this fair?" But I guess it's the JRPG kind of thing that's always I found it off-putting. But in listening to you talk, I start to think, well, maybe I've missed a lot of good stories by being put off by the whole JRPG.
Well, I'm kind of put off by them too. For like these days, I don't. I kind of just feel like the style is like if I try to play them, they're not very fun for me. And that's more in more recent years. And this is of course kind of has more of an old school feel to it. My game does, and I'm just kind of making it for myself, like what I would like to play. If I could wipe my memory and say, here's a game of this type and it's made by somebody else. Would I enjoy it? Yes, I would enjoy it. But yeah, I think a lot of the, and a lot of the JRPGs, they have a lot of like the same themes you see over and over again. You got the heroes that saves the world, and they're always like a teenager, and always just magic and wizards,
and they become Jesus, yes, and they kill God. We know the drill.
Yeah, exactly.
You always kill God, which is fun, but it gets boring after a while. Like, you can kill God with a book. It's not that impressive. Nietzsche pulled it off.
When you talk about, like making the kind of game that you'd like to play, when I think about, the kind of game I'd like to play when I was young, well, there weren't computers like this when I was young. And, but still, I'm wondering, is in an era when they have most people are busy themselves about the 3D kind of RPG, and I understand that old school is kind of a thing here. I'm wondering what attracted you in particular to this kind of old school kind of storytelling on 2D stuff.
Well, it comes back down to whether it was that when I was younger and I played these type of games, there was some really good stories to be told, and they had a positive impact on me, and it's the same thing as Star Trek, right? You've got some really good episodes that kind of provide hypothetical scenarios that you can then like see like a moral of the story kind of thing, and it was just a good story. And that's what inspired me to want to do the same thing, because I wanted to tell a good story. And
Star Trek, as we all know, is horribly inconsistent.
No.
Yeah, it can be. It
contradicts itself all the time.
This is a point at which I'm going to ask a question that I already know the answer to because I've asked it before the show started. And this is the point at which Jacob probably says, "Oh," and groans.
Damn it!
But get out your bingo cards, because I'm going to ask when it comes. I'm going to ask if it's going to come to Switch, because you already told me the answer.
Oh yes, that's in the works. I'm working with a publisher that has done this before, has ported RPG Maker MV games to the Switch. I think they're called like Ratatalia, some name like that games, and they are going to port it to Nintendo Switch as well as consoles as well. So, yeah, that's in the works. I'm trying as fast as I can on that one, but it's cut. The speed at which that happens is out of my hands, as far as, because I'm not gonna go through getting some kind of contract with Nintendo or publishing agreement with them, and then trying to figure out how to port this all myself. I'm like, no, I think I'd rather somebody that's already done this before can maybe help with that. So yeah, but it's coming.
That's the thing. What made me think of that, especially in this case, is there are a few YouTube channels that I watch, and they kind of seem to specialize in this kind of RPG, and it's like sale of the week. What's the latest little kind of game that's like this out there, So that's one of the things that made me think of that as I started to play this.
Interesting.
One of it's called, what's the guy's name? Oh, Maple Syrup Gaming. That's it. He talks about this kind of game a lot.
Yeah, I would say that this is the type of game that, you know, I really liked when I was younger. But I've played a few that I got really into, but like I'm just not into as many of them as I used to be. I think it's just because of the stories, though. Like if there was a story that grabbed me, I'd still like this kind of game. It's a good type of game if you're trying to tell a story. But sometimes people, I think a lot of these games have the gameplay of a JRPG, but they didn't actually like write a good story. So I have no interest in playing it, right? So like that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as the genre that I've noticed.
Right. So you say you're not doing this for money, so you're not doing this. This is not your primary thing. Out of curiosity, what is your primary thing?
Two things. So to pay my bills, I do IT support for medical clinics remotely. So I am a small business owner. I also fix people's shitty computer problems and stuff like that. But typically the way it works is I get paid monthly to be 24/7 IT support, and then I support all their servers and their workstations and everything like that. As for what I do outside of that, I'm also chairman of Homes Now Not Later. We manage 2 tiny home villages for people who are homeless in Bellingham, and the villages are managed by the residents themselves. So we don't have any paid staff or anything like that. It's all volunteer, and I do that as well. So life keeps me pretty busy. Life keeps me pretty busy, but the game dev is just something I enjoy doing, right? It's fun for me, so I keep doing it.
So,
wow, I'm actually impressed.
Yeah. May I throw out another question here?
Yeah, sure.
So about character growth in this game, I really like the way that they added this knowledge point system. I think I've seen something similar a long time ago or something like that. I like to pick and choose, cherry pick, as you would say. But I'm a little bit confused at times how much damage is that skill is doing. Could we maybe get a tool tip for that in battle or stuff like that?
There should be in the actual descriptions of it, but the as far as visually showing that it's stacking and you can see how it stacks, yeah, I do think that could definitely be improved. But there in the description of the skills, it does tell you that, but at the same time, it might not be totally clear either. Like once you get that skill, what it's done versus where it used to be at and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's a matter of me being able to figure it out based on all these plugins I'm taping together. And so whenever I see an opportunity to improve the visual representation of what is actually even happening to the player, I do that every chance I can. But that's the only part that it's a lack of technical skill at this point for why it's not all in there, but it is something I intend to improve on when I see it.
I had a follow-up question, but I forgot, so let me come back to that later. It just flew over my head suddenly. That's weird.
It happens. You're a student, so I mean you're tired and stressed all the time. So I mean,
oh yeah, that too.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
You don't say.
So no worries there. So we got the one game now. We got Starshift Origins. Next up is Rebellion. Where does that take us?
Starshift Rebellion. It takes place on a planet in the Outer Rim, on the edge of the territory of this, because the villains in this game are the ESA, the Earth Systems Alliance. They are a product of messing with the timeline and stuff like that. And so the next story takes place and tells the formation of the Outer Rim Coalition, who the Outer Rim Coalition is like a scattered group of basically people that have just been screwed over on the edge of space, and they like come together to basically become independent from ESA rule. And
are still they very pejoratively called the Orcs?
Yeah. Outer Rim Coalition, the Orc. That is their abbreviation. Yeah, but So the story of that game takes place on a planet called Infernus Prime, and you are part of the game starts off with you as three of these little terrorists, basically little rebel group that they live out in the desert where nobody really goes out there. They have these
a little terrorism as a treat.
Yeah, so they detect that there's ESA troops digging somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So they go out to investigate. They find out that there's an android there that downloaded an ancient alien consciousness and went crazy and killed the whole team. And you neutralize it. And then the story goes off from there with where you are the android, but you have the main character is the android, but you have this alien consciousness in your brain, and more of the story gets revealed, which kind of unlocks a secret that gives the rebels a chance to basically stand on their own and get these guys off their back. And again, there's crazy time travel shenanigans going on too, which is why this even got so messed up in the first place. The story is kind of meant to be not a time travel story. Like, you're not really primarily the time traveler, even though there is some of that in the story. It's meant to be more like a time travel conspiracy story. And a lot of people don't find out about the conspiracy because they're changed by it. Meaning, if a change happens to the universe, it changes them. Therefore, they didn't know that they were changed. So Origins, for example, is the first crew of the Dauntless, which they come from the original timeline before it got messed up. So they're aware, for some reason they were protected. So they're aware of what was changed. So that's why they're trying to change it back. Meanwhile, these rebels aren't aware of what's changed, but they become aware of how it's been changed and what the stakes are. And that causes them to act and go on to feeling the urgency of the story to resolve it, and in the main game Legacy, you will be one of the options is to join this Outer Rim coalition, and you start to form like its government, and whether or not you use like democracy, or whether you have a more authoritarian bend, or whether you decided to let the prisoners go, or whether you decided to kill the hostages, that kind of situation. And then at the end, that will kind of affect the ending in Legacy, where you have all these choices and stuff.
I like what I'm hearing.
Yeah, sounds very unique.
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm going for. Yeah, I mean, you can't just copy what everyone else has done. I mean, obviously, I'm taking inspiration from a lot of other things, but I'm also trying to do my own thing too, and not just like copy what I've seen before. It is
unique, very high sci-fi, very it's not exactly hard sci-fi in the slightest, but you're not making it as such. I do appreciate you stating that the time travel bullshit is not the main part of a story, but rather a bad thing that screws things over, because that saves you from having to do time travel in the story, which will make things very confusing.
Yeah, no, actually, a lot of the plot involves getting a hold of what's called a temporal shield unit, which kind of like once you have a temporal shield unit, you're protected. So like when changes happen, you see the changes happen in front of you.
You cannot be fiddled with. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's more about stopping it from continuing rather than being the time traveler and making all these changes. Yeah. Yes. So and the villain is the one trying to make all the changes.
And basically impossible to write good.
Yeah,
because the moment you put any thought into it, everything falls apart.
Yeah, and I can say it is like multiple layers of an onion, and it's getting more and more crazy to try to thread it together. But
so the whole point is to undo all that, because it's making things very confusing for everyone involved, and we just don't want to deal with that.
Well, kind of like so. For example, the group from Origins, the main crew that survives, they become a group called the Order of Restoration. So that means they're trying to restore things back to the way they were. But the Outer Rim Coalition is different. They're not trying to restore things back the way they are. They're trying to keep things the way they are, but to prevent any further damage from occurring. So a new path, but we stopped what was going on, so it's not going to get any worse.
So there's a difference between unscrewing the timeline and keeping it exactly as screwed as it is right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then those who are also trying to screw it up even more. So then there's that. faction as well.
Can I ask? And you talked a little bit about this, about what your influence was, and you never know when you're going to ask this question, because I had a friend that's a developer, and one point I asked him, I said, "How does a marine biologist become a professional developer?" And I said, "So I thought, did you like wake up one day and say, 'Hey, I can do better,' or you just say, 'Wow, I'm bored on a Sunday,' or in my case, someone said, 'Hey, your first writing class is on Saturday.' Where did all this come from in your case?"
For me, it came from being inspired by stories and games, and then wanting to reproduce that. But just my own angle, right? And also too, as a side effect, the thing that I really like about game development is you learn so many skills at once that cross over into so many other areas at once. So like when you're learning the programming side, that crosses over to if someone wants you to do something with some boring accounting software or a GIS mapping application or any other like where software skills are needed, it transfers over to something like that. When I'm making fictional space nations and fictional organizations in my game with other company logos and flags, that's useful for if somebody wants something made, I can make it. Making the trailer for your game, you learn about marketing, you learn about how to...
A lot of transferable skills.
Yeah, they transfer over to anything else, and so I learn a lot of stuff on accident just trying to make my game for fun, right? It's something I do kind of as a hobby for fun, but then I'm learning all these skills that transfer over in other areas, and that's always been the case, so that's why I kind of stuck with it.
So that leads me just to the next question. What were your prime influences? In general, not in regard of the games or the universe, but in general in that regard.
Well, a lot of my influences actually came from fiction, like really good stories, and I wanted to, like Star Trek, like Suikoden, like the Final Fantasy, like Mass Effect, like lots of movies, lots of shows. Like it was just I just wanted to tell a good story too. That was my main inspiration. As for in life, I also try to be informed, meaning I don't just look at any news source. I look at everything, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's true, what's not. Maybe I can see why this group might think this, or why this group might think that. And a lot of times too, it's fuel for stories too. Something you encounter in real life, you can turn into a story, and it's fun to turn it into a story because you can also, over embellish it too to make it more fun. And so a lot of what I do in telling a story too is just kind of some exaggeration of what I've seen in real life too. And just adding aliens and extra crap onto it. So, but I mean, like the idea that these are different worlds with their own like political system and their own interests and stuff like that. That's comes into play as well in that. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question on that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can definitely tell there's a lot of love pulled from other places here, and that's not a bad thing. All the best stuff pulls from other things, so it's fine.
yeah, like all good art is based on previous art. Imagine trying to create. When people create stuff today, you have a huge foundation of stories and ideas that have already been done before that you can expand on. If you had to start from scratch again and you had no knowledge of any stories that have ever been told, it probably wouldn't be as good, when you're trying to write your first story. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
Yeah.
But I try to do something unique too, because I don't want to just say, "Oh, I replicated very well what I've seen done before." No, I'm trying to do something a little different. But easier said than done. But I'm trying.
Well, just the fact that you've got a bird man and a cat man and a two-headed snake man alone, it makes us feel more interesting.
Huge points for variety.
Well, and partially that's due to the because I can do pixel art from scratch, but it takes a long time. So a lot of times what I'm doing when I'm making this stuff is kind of what I would call Photoshop chop shop. And so there might be a lot of graphics out there of a cat, but then I just cut the cat's head off and put it on a human body, and then you got a cat person. Like, so there's some of it is that. I have no problem having a cat person, but some of it is that, where it was just easier for me to, like, okay, I can take this, chop it off, put it here, do it like this, and then provide that variety, but not have it be taking me like months to make one character, or weeks or days to make one single character. So, there's some efficiency there that you gotta be able to get it done in a reasonable amount of time.
Excuse me. Well, I was going to say probably keeping it to top-down 2D gives you a lot of freedom that you might not have if you're doing this as a 3D project.
If it was 3D, it would just take longer to do all of it. And again, I'm all for 3D, doing 3D as well, but I'm just gonna step up as needed until I get there. Because what my long-term goal is, or what I'm gonna do after we make a few of these episodes, is I'm going to make what I would call the Starshift 2.0 framework, and that is basically the like probably will be in a different engine, more robust, probably 3D or 2.5D or something, and will be a little more ambitious. And I might even do a Kickstarter and actually hire people to do like the coding exactly like it needs to be done to make the product viable. But I can get a lot of traction out of the code base I've generated from these episodes before I get there. But I'm actively trying to do that, and that's kind of my long-term thoughts.
Just please call it something that isn't Starshift Framework 2.0, because that is the most like tech bro name I could think of for anything.
No, I'm talking about the project file and the code base, because the next one is going to be in a different engine, right? So I basically will have to toss aside everything that I've done that works in RPG Maker MV, because this is all RPG
Understood.
Maker. Yeah. That's what I mean. It's not going to be called 2.0 framework. It's going to be called a name like the other ones, like some kind of cool name that makes it sound interesting as a story to play.
Good.
I'm with you there. I agree with you there.
So wait, you said you've been working with RPG Maker since the early 2000s? I didn't know RPG Maker. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, since the illegally translated version by Don Miguel in
RPG Maker is ancient, relatively speaking.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, and there's an RPG Maker 95, and I even messed with that a little bit. Yeah, it was on Windows 95 or 98, and yep. And I also messed around with it on the PlayStation when I was younger. Yeah, it's a really nice engine. You can do a lot with it if you're trying to tell an RPG or trying to tell a story that. It's really easy to pick up if you don't know how to code or whatever, but it did teach me a lot about code, because you still have to think like you're programming. You just don't have to worry about syntax or squiggly brackets. You got the buttons for the functions, but you also have code if you want to do straight code for stuff that's not in the engine by default, which I have a lot of that too. So it's a nice engine for beginners, really, but I think the engine mostly has a bad reputation because it's so easy to kind of pick up and make a game that most of the games you see are kind of like canned trash RPG Maker games, because somebody just kind of slaps something together with the default assets and goes, I made a game, and then that's the vast majority of shovelware that you see out there. But it's not the engine's fault. It's just a consequence of it being easy enough that a bunch of people have done that and kind of given it a bad reputation, so to speak, for you can't make a professional game.
As a consequence, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of code, which language does RPG Maker use?
JavaScript. It's basically based off of.
Shit!
It's basically based off of the Pixie.js framework for all the rendering, and it's the actual plugins are written in JavaScript, and when you're actually playing the game, it's actually running as a shell of a web browser using nw.js, and so it's all
Jank 2000s engine. Least Jank 2000s engine.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh shit!
But hey guys, I would normally stay as long as you guys.
Oh, that's
want me
right.
to,
You got to
but
go.
but
Yeah, no, you have a thing.
I have another podcast to get to in case
No
anyone
worries.
is interested. Rarely Typical Players podcast. We review like RPG Maker games. So
no, you got to go
thank
do
you
your
for having
thing.
me.
Oh, thank you for coming.
No.
Yeah, we'll wrap up on our own. You got to go. I get it.
No. Thank you. I really appreciate being here. And if you guys want me again, let me know.
I'm sure we will.
Okay. All right. Take it easy.
Thanks for joining.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
I forgot about that hard stop, you guys. I apologize. So yeah, the game that you can currently get is called Starshift Origin. I think what I'm going to do, since apparently this first episode isn't very long, I'm just going to play more of it tomorrow. Why not? I mean, if we can finish it in 5 to 7 hours, that's one more stream, I think.
In a bit of a
That's if
rush.
you know what you're doing. You know.
Right.
I mean,
But
you got,
still.
yeah, you probably have, I would say, about 2 episodes of it to go.
Why not?
2 streams.
Yeah.
After all that, I may actually have to reconsider my stance on top-down 2D games. I guess I'm missing out.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, it depends on the game too. But I like a lot of 2D top-down, games. Like one of my favorite. I mean, Starfleet 2 is a 2D top-down game. Starflight, one of my favorite games, is a 2D top-down. I mean, it depends on the game and the story they're telling.
Well, my first exposure to top-down 2D was on a trip to Japan, and I said to myself, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for 12 hours? And I bought myself one of these little Game Boy things.
Interesting.
Yeah, the OG Game Boy, the original.
Yeah, right. So it's like I loaded that up and said, okay, there you go.
Yes, Cychronic in the chat still says that 2D still sells well. Yeah, I mean, 2D games are still very popular because you can do a lot with them. They don't break the bank. They give you a lot to use versus your imagination. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, I'm going to be honest.
Computers like them because 2D is easy to draw.
I'm going to be honest. Like for the Grand Theft Auto games, for example, the top-down 2D version games I like them a lot more than any of the 3D ones. Honestly,
that's a take.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them on Switch.
Oh yeah, I was playing Moonlighter yesterday on my Switch for the first time, which I was enjoying.
I've recently watched some people play this Octopath Traveler, and it's like the whole HD thing like that. That's like kind of 2D, kind of HD. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, speaking of 2D, the game next week we're going to be talking about is also a top-down 2D game. Next week we're going to have, 2 developers in a row. I know, right? But next week we're going to be talking, what's it called? Delta V? Is that what those 2 symbols are? Delta V.
Delta V Rings of Saturn.
Delta V Rings of Saturn is what we're going to be talking about next week on the show. And because the game is finally leaving early access later this summer. And we couldn't be more excited. The developer's a great guy. He's made a really terrific game. So we're very excited to have him on to talk about Delta V next week. And I think tomorrow I might just play some more Starshift Origins.
Why not?
Well, exactly. Why not? If we're that close, if we're close enough to finishing this origin story, why not? Because I really enjoyed playing it. So I think that's what we'll play tomorrow on the stream.
One quick thing before we wrap.
Yeah.
If anyone who is catching this is looking at the chat, the Delta V and a bunch of other games that were put together by devs on our Discord is in this bundle, the Independent Space Alliance.
Oh, right. Yes. A bunch of our developer friends got together and put together their own bundle. It's a terrific bundle. Like, you cannot go wrong with any game in that bundle. My God, that is a terrific bundle. So yeah, I guess that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. Great chat today, as always. And we'll see you back here tomorrow for more of this. I mean, why not? So have a great day, everyone. Thank you, as always, to our patrons. And thank you, as always, to everyone who's gotten vaccinated. We really appreciate that you've gotten vaccinated. If you haven't gotten vaccinated yet, please just stop listening to my voice and go get vaccinated right now. My God. I shouldn't have to keep saying this, but I'm going to keep saying it until the pandemic is over. So have a good one, everyone.
It'll be a while at this rate.
Oh, for God, I know, right? I think the 1918 pandemic didn't last as long as this, if I remember correctly.
5 years. I talked to someone whose mother had lived through it.
Oh, 5 years? Okay, so we're in the third year of it at this point? Oh, God.
Well,
Okay.
March 2020 was
a week
3
ago.
years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's 15 years.
A week ago, yep.
Oh my God.
We're now in year 6.
Yeah, it's now April 2020 for the 80th time.
Oh, there.
And please get vaccinated. That's how we're all going to get through this. I just please just go get that. It's not hard. It's not risky. Just go get vaccinated today. Get your boosters. Trust the science, please, for the love of whatever deity you believe in. And with that, we'll see you back here tomorrow for more Starshift Origins. Have a good one, y'all. Bye-bye.